Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, BIM Adoption, Collaboration, and Best Practices. This webinar is brought to you by Applied Software, the premier software systems integrator in North America. My name is Amy Worthy, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. Throughout our presentation, we encourage you to interact with us by taking advantage of this fully customizable console. By clicking on the colorful icons at the bottom of your screen, you can minimize, maximize, and resize each of these widgets throughout the presentation. Starting from left to right, you have the Help widget. Use this if you need any assistance during the webinar. Then you have the Slides widget that contains the PowerPoint for today's presentation. The media player allows you to control the volume, and this will also be where you will see the screen share if there is a screen share in today's presentation. After that, you have the Q&A widget. So you can use this to interact with us by typing in questions and comments. Go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself. We want to know who you are, where you're located, and anything interesting you'd like to share with us. Also use this box to type in questions you have throughout the presentation. We'll take time to answer those questions at the end of today's webinar. After that, you'll have the Email Us widget, and so you can email us with any questions or comments that you have, or just open it up and get that email address and keep it handy in case you need to reach us later on. After that, you have the speaker bio where you can learn more about today's presenter, Matt Dillon. And after that, we have the Facebook widget so you can connect with us to see the latest updates and like our page if you haven't already. We also have a survey widget that we'll tell you more about later on, but be sure to complete the survey at the end of today's webinar. And we actually added one more widget that links to another webinar that we will be doing today at 2 p.m. So if you are interested in learning more about making the transition from C4R to BIM 360 design, be sure to sign up for that. If you haven't already, search for us on social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, so be sure to search Applied Software. We now offer visualization services like photorealistic renderings, animations, panoramas, and more. We scope and produce and manage the work for you, so you don't have to worry about the technical expertise in-house. You can learn more at asti.com/visualization or email us at visualization@asti.com. Be sure to visit our website for more information on services and support, products, training opportunities like CAD learning and live lab learning, and more. For those questions that just can't wait, you can chat with an available representative on our website. You'll find the chat box on the bottom right side of any page of our website. If there's no one online to answer your request, we'll receive your chat via email and get back to you as soon as possible. You'll also find a complete schedule of upcoming events, webinars, and trainings. As I mentioned earlier, we added, I think last week, a webinar on making the transition from Collaboration for Revit to BIM 360 design. We have a team of 4 of our technical guys that are going to be demonstrating this for you. So if you are able to attend, or even if you're not, please go ahead and click on the link widget that you'll see at the bottom of your screen and go ahead and register for that. If you're not able to attend, then you can register and you'll receive the recording of the webinar later on. We also have a few other webinars coming up this month. We have CAD learning, getting started with the basics, on Wednesday, April 25th from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we have part 2 of our AutoCAD Civil 3D Tools series on pipe networks on Thursday, April 26th, also from 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern Time. At the conclusion of the webinar, a survey will pop up. Please complete the survey to be entered into a $25 Amazon gift card giveaway. You must complete the survey to be entered into the drawing. Now you can save on live lab learning courses by attending our webinars. Sign up for a live lab learning course within 30 days of this webinar and save 25% on the price of the course. You must sign up within 30 days to receive the discount, but you do not have to take the course within 30 days. You'll receive more information about this in a follow-up email, and it will include a link to the recording of this webinar and a 25% off coupon. You can visit asti.com/livelablearning to learn more and see upcoming courses. Now I would like to introduce you to Matt Dillon, today's presenter. Matt specializes in the MEP, architectural and structural products, and provides training, consulting, implementation, and product support services. You can see all of the other highlights about Matt here on the screen or in the speaker bio widget. And I will go ahead and jump in and we'll ask a poll question. Please indicate which best describes your role on building projects. I'll give you guys some time to submit your answer. We'll leave that open for just a few more seconds. So if you haven't already filled out your answer, please do that now. All right. And here are the results. It looks like most people are architects, and then it's kind of scattered across the board between owners and MEP or structural engineers or other building industry consultants. We have one more poll question just to learn a little bit more about you. So please describe the types of projects you work on, and you can choose more than one option on this one. So please choose all that apply to you. We'll leave that up just a little bit longer to give you some time to make your choice. All right. It looks like a lot of educational. It looks like everybody's pretty scattered across the board. We have representation from each type of project. So that's great. And now, Matt, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Amy. And thank you, everybody, for attending our webinar this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you might be. So we're going to talk about, we're going to break this up into a few different sections. Let me just kind of go through the agenda here. First, I'm going to talk about some industry trends that are affecting building information modeling, maybe driving building information modeling, just some issues around it. And then we're going to look at the current state of BIM adoption in the United States and see where things are, and kind of a little bit of a history. And then we'll focus on implementation best practices, so that if you're getting ready to implement BIM or thinking about implement BIM, some things that you need to be include in your plan. And then we'll finally wrap up the session with a discussion on collaboration and the benefits of collaboration and the impact of collaboration on the whole BIM process. So again, first, let's take a look at some of the industry trends that are around BIM and BIM adoption. There's some specific influence that are impacting the architecture, engineering, and construction and infrastructure industries. BIM momentum and mandates mean vast amounts of additional information. The number of architects and engineers and other players that are realizing the benefits of model-based design are becoming, means that there is much more information being moved forward with the building model, and it's changing workflow expectations. More on that in just a little bit. Project complexity is an issue. Because of more regulations these days, more requirements and desires for more more sustainable buildings, as well as a host of other economical factors, mergers, acquisitions, consolidation of building teams. All of that is contributing to drive more complex projects, which means we're seeing more issues with coordination and communication and collaboration. There's an explosion of data, so I mentioned that with that first bullet item. As the building information modeling process evolves, we're seeing more and more information and data attached to those models in a variety of different ways or accompanying those models. And the management of that data is becoming an issue. And how do owners take advantage of that? And then finally, information mobility. This is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. People are no longer tethered to their desk in their office, and so they need access to the building data throughout the life cycle of the project, from conceptual design all the way through building occupation in a variety of locations. They're, again, not just sitting at their desks. So we need mobility, we need access on mobile devices. When we look at owners in particular, there's a lot of industry challenges that they're facing. These include challenges during project development, which again, with increasing project complexity and with siloed teams, but also challenges once a project is turned over to them to better manage life cycle costs and operate a building so that it reaches its full performance potential. As environmental, economic pressures and regulatory requirements increase for building projects, so does project complexity. So large buildings typically require diverse services teams working from several geographic locations. Buildings themselves have increasingly complex assets, structures, systems, and technology at their core, and all it needs to be carefully designed, coordinated, installed, and ultimately operated. The owner may have mandated and driven a BIM process and paid for rich asset data to be developed during the design and construction phases. All too often, that rich information is not seamlessly transitioned to the operations teams for use in managing the facility. It's common for owners to start building operation activities without a populated CMMS maintenance management solution, even though the data is there. Frequently, the capital projects team will only look at the project life cycle through the lens of their perspective, that of design and construction. And that's where their business goals lie. They don't really look and think about what happens after the handover of the building to the owner, or even how to enable a smoother handover and transition of the project to operations teams, who are often entirely in a different part of the owner organization. And finally, building management systems and operations tools produce incredible amounts of data, again, about a building's performance, often referred to as big data. Unfortunately, building owners and their operations teams are often overwhelmed by the sheer volume of real-time performance data and aren't able to effectively use it to develop business insights and drive actions to improve building efficiency and performance. BIM is also a catalyst for integrated project delivery, which is a project delivery approach that integrates people, systems, business structures, and practices into a single process. IPD collaboratively harnesses the talents and insights of all participants to optimize project results, increase value to the owner, reduce waste, and maximize efficiency through all phases of design, fabrication, and construction. An additional goal of IPD is to reduce or eliminate litigation. All parties involved share the risk and the rewards. This is a significant departure from traditional contractual relationships between team members, which in the past have fostered an adversarial climate of risk and liability avoidance. This in turn has historically inflated building costs, caused delays, and reduced collaboration. And as we'll see in a few minutes, collaboration is a key component of an effective BIM process. So let's look at some benefits and some opportunities that we see with BIM, and there's a lot of them. I'm only going to mention a few here. We're seeing the ability now early on in the building design process to get real usable information and feedback about the sustainability of our proposed design, and we can at early stages of the process make decisions that have big impact on that sustainability. With the building information model, fabricators can now fabricate duct runs, pipe spools, fittings, and they can do this off-site and then deliver that to have it installed on-site, increasing or decreasing the time it takes to construct the building, reducing errors and clashes between systems. And in addition to that, the contractor can use the building model to extract critical locations for things like pipe hangers, pipe stub-ups, etc., and locate those with extreme accuracy on the job site. The design teams are finding that the price for entry into a virtual reality type of system is much lower, and it's getting lower all the time. So we're seeing more and more people taking advantage of the visualization possibilities from a building information model to better communicate the design and design intent, not just to the owner, but to all the stakeholders of the project team. But in particular for the owners, this also gives them a much clearer idea and better expectations of the finished product. And for the owner themselves, if done properly, they can take advantage, if planned properly, they can take advantage of all of the data that builds up in the building model through the design, build, and operate phases of the project. So during the design phase of the project, the architects and the engineers can input information about some of the basic building components, everything from the structure of the building to some of the spaces in the building, materials that are in the building, etc. And then as the project goes through construction, the contractor can add more information about certain specific assemblies and equipment, etc., that are in the building. And all of that information can then be used by the owner to operate the building and put that information into their CMMS systems. Now again, this means that the BIM mandate and the BIM requirements have to be structured in such a way to take advantage of that information and provide for consistency and reliability of the information. So let's look at the current state of BIM adoption now. Now, there's a lot of different sources for data on this, but if one searches for general BIM adoption statistics, probably the most frequent information is found with McGraw-Hill, Dodge Analytics, and the United Kingdom's National Building Specification. The 2012 McGraw-Hill Smart Market Report on the business value of BIM in North America shows the increase in BIM adoption between 2009 and 2012. And looking at this map, you can see that surprisingly, the Northeast probably has the lowest total BIM adoption rate, although the rate of increase between 2009 and 2012 was fairly significant. Greatest BIM adoption is actually, at that time anyway, was 77% in the western part of the country. This is actually attributed by many people to a lot of health type projects that were being done in that part of the country at the time. The South and the Midwest kind of falling somewhere in the middle. And then the 2014 McGraw-Hill Smart Market Report on the business value of BIM for construction in global markets, the perceived return on investment on BIM was reported. And notice that 76% of North American contractors rated a positive return on investment for BIM, and 27% rated an extremely positive investment for BIM. Now, if you look at the things that the perceived, and again, I stress the word perceived ROI, but if you look at the perceived ROI from the perspective of some of the various players and what's important to them, the 2012 Smart Market Report documents that. And for owners, you'll notice that owners saw an impact on sustainability, as we mentioned that already, as well as reduced project costs, cycle time, better communication, project process outcomes, and personal productivity. And we're just looking at areas where they saw 50% or more return on investment. Now, if we look at the other participants, the other major stakeholders in the design and construction process, we see that there's pretty much general agreement in most areas, although there's less attributed to a positive impact on sustainability, but that's most likely because that is less of an interest from a purely business investment standpoint than it is to the owner. But the other areas are fairly well aligned, which is an interesting consensus in just general across the board perceived return on investment. In January of 2018, the Dodge Analytics Conversion blog, actually it's an Autodesk blog, that's a mistake, reported on the benefits of having other key team members using BIM for high engagement and low engagement users. And so what we're seeing here is a high engagement user is a firm that does 50% or actually more than 50% of their projects with a BIM process. Low engagement users are those that do 50% or less. And you can see that the return on investment increases the more projects you do with BIM. So the more you're committed to BIM and the more you're in, then the more benefits you're going to see. In that same convergence article, and again, that's an Autodesk convergence article, respondents were asked to predict the future benefits of what they see as the future benefits of an integrated BIM workflow. And as you read through these articles, some common themes begin to emerge. And those are owner confidence, more work with less labor, innovation, the ability to attract a more technology-savvy workforce. And this is particular in something that I've run into on multiple occasions recently as a desire for, say, an architectural or an engineering firm to be able to attract younger, more technological savvy employees. And that is to have a BIM implementation. BIM's not just applicable to building projects. In recent years, we've seen a really fast ramp up on BIM adoption in the transportation industry. And you'll see that a lot of the benefits that they see are the same that we're seeing in the building industry. So a lot of consistency here in the responses for perceived ROI as well as actual measurable benefits that they're seeing on their projects. And again, the same common themes: reduced cost, reduced rework and errors, reduced conflicts, greater client engagement, and again, improved staff recruitment and retention, and improved ability to win work and retain clients. So if we look at some of the success factors and obstacles to BIM that are documented, and this is from the 2015 Smart Market Brief on BIM advancements, a quarter of respondents report at least a 25% improvement in productivity. And then 1/3 of respondents report at least a 25% reduction in on-site labor due to off-site fabrication. So again, that fabrication benefit. Notice that under obstacles, lack of collaboration on project teams is considered an obstacle to success. We're going to be talking more about collaboration later in the presentation. And then the success factors include, and this should be fairly obvious to most people, having a BIM plan, standards, and of course actively leveraging your models in project meetings. I also want to point out, if you look in the upper left part of that slide, the actually, no, sorry, got another slide coming up to show that. Let's take another look at BIM success obstacles. And this graph basically describes frequency of occurrence moving from left to right, and then the impact on the project in a negative way going from bottom to top, higher impact being to the top, more frequency to the left, or to the right, excuse me. And you'll notice that the impact, the item that probably has the greater overall impact from a negative standpoint is probably this number 1, which is a low level of collaboration, not because it has the highest potential for impact, but because combined with frequency, that has it makes it have a bigger impact overall. So for example, number 2, lower level of team interest and support, while that would certainly have a high impact, its frequency, it doesn't happen very often. Likewise, lack of owner BIM advocacy, while it happens a lot, there's a lot of projects out there where the owner really doesn't care about BIM. They don't mandate BIM, they don't care about BIM, they probably don't want to pay any more for BIM. It's perceived as having less of an impact on the overall process, again, because most users who adopt a BIM process will find benefits whether the owner wants BIM or not. Okay, so let's take a look at some implementation best practices. How do you successfully implement a BIM process? And before we do that, I'd like to go ahead and launch another poll. And Amy, I'm going to ask you to control the poll here, but if you guys would answer the following question: what are your BIM implementation plans? Just so we can get an idea of where everybody is currently with their BIM implementations. And Amy, again, if you could take care of this poll question for me, because this is a new environment for me, and I'm not sure how to.
Yep, I can take care of it for you.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll give everybody.
We forgot to go over.
Yeah, we'll give everybody a little bit longer to answer that. All right, we should have received most of the responses by now, so we can go ahead and click to the results. It looks like most people have already implemented BIM and are productive with it. About 5% have tried and not been successful. Some plan to implement this year, and some plan to implement in the next 5 years, and 5% say you can take CAD from my cold dead hands.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully there's something a little bit of something here for everybody. All right. So let's talk about some common pitfalls first before we get into actually how to. What are some things that you need to watch out for and be aware of? And those of you that have tried to implement BIM and maybe failed or not been so successful, you may recognize some of these. And even those of you that have implemented BIM successfully, you may have run across some of these things. You know, one of the big things is, and one of the most critical aspects of a BIM implementation is you've got to have ownership buy-in. So a huge pitfall is when owners, and when I say ownership, what I mean by that is a mandate from the leadership of the company. If the leadership of the company is just sort of tolerating the BIM implementation, maybe providing a little bit of support, but not actively mandating it and driving it, it's probably going to fail. We don't see very many. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever seen a BIM implementation that was successful from the grassroots up. Also, no plan. No BIM implementation is going to happen organically. You can't just invest in the technology, maybe upgrade to some software, and maybe send some people to a fundamentals class and then expect it to just happen. It's not going to work. Without a plan, it's really just not going to go anywhere. You've got to have a commitment. There's always going to be rough spots that you're going to run into, especially in the middle. It's not going to be profitable at first. You've got to be committed to see it through those initial growing pains to realize the benefits. And a lack of understanding, improper expectations. And, I can relate somewhat to this. I was a young intern architect when we made the transition from manual drafting to CAD. And back then, it was really just a matter of learning how to use a new tool. It was still drafting. The rules really hadn't changed any. Instead of using a T-square and a triangle and a Leroy set or something, I was using a computer. And once I learned how to do that, well, I was still just drafting. When we moved from drafting from CAD to BIM, that's an entire process change. That's disruptive technology. And disruptive technology means you've got to change the way you do things to take advantage of what it brings to offer. And again, another example of disruptive technology is a smartphone. Think about how your life has changed since the smartphones have come about and how you've changed the way you're doing things. And as an example, just take banking. I don't think I've stepped foot in the lobby of a bank in 5 or 6 years, except for maybe the rare occasion where I might need to get a cashier's check or something. So again, it's not just a replacement for CAD. It is a complete change in process. You got to be accountable. Everybody involved has to be accountable and take ownership of their part of the implementation. This is a common thing that I hear. We're too busy right now to do anything like that. Well, the problem with that is if you're not too busy, then you're probably feeling some economic pressure to not invest very much in anything until you get more work, and then you're too busy again. Bottom line is there's no perfect time to start other than to say the perfect time is now, whether you're busy or not. And this one's a fairly common one that we're seeing more and more. Some firms are feeling forced or pressured into adopting BIM, and they really don't want to go there yet, but because of pressure from owners and market forces, they feel that they have to adopt BIM. But then they only use it on those projects where they absolutely have to. And if you go back to that slide I showed earlier about, the high usage users of BIM versus the low usage users, who saw the most benefits? If you're forced to adopt it and you only use it on those projects where you absolutely have to, you're going to see far fewer benefits than you will if you just go ahead and make the move and be committed. So those are some common pitfalls. Here's another one, and this one I see frequently. People try to bite off more than they can chew. They kind of try to solve world hunger in 1 week. When you initially do your implementation, it's important to focus on, say, 4 or 5 at the most reasonable and attainable BIM goals. Identify 4 or 5 things that you want to accomplish and take advantage of with your initial implementation, and master those, get those things down, and then you can come back and start adding other things to your portfolio of BIM goals, BIM benefits. So let's look at the ingredients for success. What makes a BIM implementation work? Well, first off, you need to choose to adopt BIM. Even if you feel like you're being forced to adopt BIM, step back and take a look at it objectively and just ask yourself, okay, if we've got to do this, are there benefits to be had? And if there are, and there are, then take advantage of those benefits, embrace it, and commit to it. And you'll find that your attitude changes, and when your attitude changes, the whole process becomes easier. Again, you've got to have a top-down approach. Leadership must drive this. You're not going to have this happen from the trenches. And part of that leadership driving this is to excite your staff, market it internally, and get your staff excited about it. Very important, partner with someone you can trust and someone who can guide you through the process and provide additional resources for you. Chances are, even if you have people on staff that are knowledgeable with BIM, that's not going to be enough to make your implementation succeed. You're still going to need some help from an outside trusted source. And going to that topic on exciting the staff, well, reward them. When certain goals and benefits are attained, then reward the staff. And it doesn't have to be anything major. It doesn't have to be, a huge raise or anything like that, but just something that recognizes them for their achievement and encourages them to achieve more. And again, provide that support. So provide internal support, external support, invest in the technology, invest in the staff, training, etc. And also, again, allow that external third party to assist you in providing that support so that you're not having to go it on your own. Have a plan. Very important, and again, that third party can help you develop that plan, give you some objective feedback as to how reasonable and attainable your goals are, and to help you develop a plan that you can follow from start to finish, realizing that yes, things may change along the way, and you may need to make course corrections. But without a plan to begin with, you're really going to go nowhere. And then most importantly, don't bail. You're going to run into rough spots along the way. That's inevitable. I always tell people when I'm teaching a Revit fundamentals class at the end of the class, they are now dangerous. They are now just enough knowledgeable in Revit to go in and break stuff. And that's when the learning really happens. When you're on that project and you're running into things that maybe you didn't cover in a fundamentals class, or that maybe you did, you just don't remember. And when you figure those things out, when you power through and figure it out, that's when the learning really occurs. And too often what I see is when firms hit a rough spot in a project, they're facing a deadline, and just, in the interest of meeting the deadline, they will drop back to the old technologies, the old methods for doing things, and they never get past that point. Frustration is going to be part of this process, but on the other side of the frustration is a sense of accomplishment and again, those benefits that we've talked about. Be patient. It's going to take time. And frankly, your first couple, 3 projects are probably not going to be profitable, but after you get through those and you've gone through this learning curve, you will see the benefits. But it does take patience. It's not going to happen overnight. So what are some of the elements of an implementation process? Well, the first part, I keep talking about having a plan. How do we do that planning? Well, the first step is to have some sort of a discovery, and a discovery is an honest evaluation of the current state of affairs in your office, current proficiencies for people, technology, what's the level of hardware and software? Do you have things that maybe need to be upgraded? You need to be realistic and honest about this. And then also, what is it that you're wanting to gain from the whole process? Like, identify those goals. Find out what is your current state, what is the state where you want to be. Okay, so establish those desired levels of implementation. Once you have the current state and the desired to state, we can start doing some high-level analysis and planning. And this would involve, identifying those particular components of a BIM process that you can use that will align themselves to what you're trying to accomplish. So if it's a certain type of a cloud work sharing and collaborative environment technology that we need to implement, or a certain type of maybe a software add-on or something, this is where you identify those components of the BIM process that you're going to need for this first stage of your implementation. And once you've got those identified, you go into some detailed planning. So you start laying out, well, what is the new workflow going to look like? What kind of information do we need? What type of technology do we need to accommodate these processes and tools that we're trying to use? And then, obviously we're going to have to come up with some sort of a realistic and comprehensive training plan. It's something that is geared specifically for your needs. Some users are going to need some sort of fundamentals training. Others may need more advanced BIM management training, for example. All that's going to culminate into a roadmap that has milestones, it has time frames, and also the specific information requirements that you're going to need from the building model to realize the goals that you want to realize. That's the plan. The implementation roadmap. Once you have that, then it's time to execute it. And the execution is going to vary, obviously, because every plan is going to be a little different, but there are some common things that happen on almost every implementation. The first thing that happens is developing standards. Typically, we have templates for various things, and those standards are going to also include not just your graphic standards, but also procedural standards, collaboration standards. All of that, a lot of that can be documented in a BIM execution plan, which is going to document things like meeting schedules, who's responsible for what, level of development and detail for certain phases of the project, among a whole host of other things. And this is also the period where you go ahead and get your technology upgraded. Any of those upgrades that were identified as part of the roadmap, go ahead and do that. Upgrade the hardware as necessary, the infrastructure, and any software upgrades. Once that's done, or while that's being done, we focus on skills development for the staff, and this is where the training happens. And again, this should be customized and tweaked and tuned for your specific needs. And then very important is to follow up as soon as possible with a pilot project. Identify a pilot project and get started on it as soon as possible after the initial training, and allow for mentoring. And again, this is where that third party, that trusted resource can come into play, where they've been there, done it, seen it. They can help you with the mentoring and get you through those rough spots on that pilot project. Hey, I don't remember how to do a hybrid detail in Revit. I've got these details I've got to do, or I've got these AutoCAD standard details that I want to convert to Revit. How do I do that? Well, a 1 to 2 hour mentoring session can get you through that hump. And then also important is when you're done with that pilot project, sit down and have, again, an honest, realistic post-mortem. What did you do well? What did you not do so well? How would you improve what you didn't do so well on the next project? And at some point, your implementation is going to be more stable. People are going to be feeling more comfortable with it. You're starting to see things work, and that's when you start to look for, okay, where do we push the envelope? What you want to adopt is what I call a culture of continuous improvement. Again, the best way to adapt and to take advantage of disruptive technology is to embrace change. And that culture of continuous improvement will allow you to do that. You'll be constantly looking for ways of pushing the envelope a little bit more, taking more advantage, and the process starts over again. It's maybe a mini implementation. It won't be as extensive, but it may again involve a few upgrades to take advantage of newer capabilities, a little bit of training, probably not a whole lot of mentoring necessary. Usually once you get through that first implementation, you get over that first big hump, adding things to it becomes much more simple after the fact. Also, BIM management needs to be considered. Who's going to manage this implementation? In smaller firms, a lot of times someone that does billable work will also have time allotted to do the BIM management, hopefully. Unfortunately, a lot of times the billable work takes precedence and it doesn't happen. Larger firms, though, usually can justify and should justify a dedicated paid BIM manager on staff. And those are the people that do the internal support for your implementation going forward. And at some point, get you to the point where you are no longer dependent on that third-party outside resource. You're self-sufficient. For the smaller firms, you can also do some outsourced BIM management. There are options for doing that. So if you don't really feel like you have the resources in-house, the person that you're trying to task to do this just doesn't have the time or maybe the expertise to do it, you can outsource a lot of that stuff to third parties. Again, a trusted third party. So that's the implementation. Let's focus on collaboration, because collaboration has come up multiple times in the course of this presentation, and it is becoming a bigger and bigger deal with BIM implementations. And if we look at traditional collaboration, people share files using email, FTP sites, and you're really kind of dependent on making sure that someone is emailing the correct file, the correct version of a file to the correct people, or if you're uploading things to an FTP site, people are downloading the correct version, and inevitably people are starting to work with different versions of the project files, and chaos ensues. That's just something that typically happens on a project using traditional, outdated, what I call analog methods of collaboration. And if you look at the benefits seen by effective collaboration, the benefits, they vary in importance from one player to the other, but you can see that all of these aspects of the project, or all of these benefits of BIM, are realized to a fairly great extent by all parties when you have an effective collaboration tool. One of the things that's making collaboration much more effective, if it's taken advantage of these days, is the cloud. By putting models in the cloud and other digital data in the cloud, you have a single source of truth. You don't have multiple versions of it flying all over the place to different people. When you need to update something, you simply push the new version up to the same cloud repository, and all the other players see it immediately. You don't have to worry about making sure that one person downloads the correct version from an FTP site and you email that same version to someone else. It's all in one place, and it's all up to date. Everybody's working from the same set of rules. You have a single source of truth. The cloud has been huge in improving collaboration, and it's only becoming more so. And if you look at the benefits of information mobility, some of the benefits include having a hard time seeing this slide on my screen, so I'm having a hard time talking to it, so bear with me a minute here. So again, just kind of some of the highlighted things here. Online meetings and cloud storage devices, both of those have a big impact on the effectiveness of collaboration. And conversely, you'll notice that there's a fairly significant decline between FTP or with FTP sites and the use of handwritten notes. And this is actually information from I want to say is about the 2014 Smart Market Report. Actually, no, it says right there, 2015 Smart Market Brief. So I can tell you that this is only accelerating. I would like to see the numbers for 2018, and I would imagine that the decline in FTP sites and handwritten documents and notes is much more significant. As opposed to the growth, you probably see the growth here being much more significant. If you look at the benefits from the improvement of information mobility and cloud storage, there's improved collaboration on project teams. Obviously, if someone can, for example, be out on the job site and be accessing the latest version of the building model, that's a benefit. Also, there's a bigger demand for more mobile device access. And again, this was in 2015, so keep in mind, we're kind of looking at a little bit of a snapshot of history. Things have changed since then, and changed for the better. So if you look at just the benefit of improved mobility with, again, access to those cloud models on mobile devices, telephones, iPads, et cetera, as well as being able to work from home, in your office, in a customer's office, whatever. Top 3 benefits of information mobility are reduced unanticipated problems, reduced reliance on paper documents, and improved team member collaboration. Those are all priority items listed by the various players, and you can see they all show a fairly good gain and benefit. Now I want to take a minute just to talk about fairly recent developments in cloud collaboration. And again, there's a lot of collaboration tools. I'm trying to be somewhat software agnostic here on this presentation, so I'm trying not to talk about specific tools that much. There are a host of cloud collaboration tools that you can use depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish and what your role is in the building, design, and construction process. But I do want to mention this one in particular, and this is Revit Cloud Collaboration. It was rolled out in 2015, January of 2015, as BIM 360 Team and A360 Collaboration for Revit, which we've always called C4R for short. And what that has allowed for is for authors in a Revit project, people actually doing the modeling, not just reviewing the data, to collaborate live in the same model. So essentially taking the traditional work sharing capabilities of Revit and allowing us to host that central model that everybody contributes to in the cloud, allowing for geographically dispersed teams that are behind different firewalls to securely collaborate on one Revit model. This has been great. This has been huge for joint ventures and things like that. Well, on April 9th of this year, Autodesk rolled out a new version of this. It's now called BIM 360 Design, and it's built on a new platform. We're going to have as Amy said earlier, we're going to have a webinar on that in just a little bit this afternoon at I believe 2 p.m. Eastern Time, where myself and 3 other of my colleagues here at Applied Software are going to demonstrate how to set up a BIM 360 design project or account and project, and then what it looks like to work in that environment. But essentially what this means is, from a big picture standpoint, is first, your user experience is going to be pretty much the same in Revit. Once you get everything in place, you're still going to be able to collaborate the same way you were before. You'll still be able to access your BIM 360 team projects as well as your new BIM 360 design projects. So your legacy data is safe. You'll still be able to work with that. But now you'll be able to take advantage of the new platform, which is BIM 360 Docs for the document management part and the web interface, combined with the design collaboration component, which is the C4R migrated forward. And this is all built on the Forge platform that Autodesk has been working with for the last few years. And the benefit of the Forge platform means that your data will now be more transportable or accessible from multiple platforms. You won't have to export something to some other format. It'll just be available to that other platform. Much more interoperability, much more collaboration between the various team members, regardless of the tools that they're using. And so again, we're seeing this collaboration just explode with possibilities and capabilities and impact on the BIM process. So this pretty much brings me to the end of my presentation. I'd like to just kind of go back and review a few key points. We talked about some industry trends, so explosion of data, project complexity, the use of collaboration on projects. We talked about the current state of BIM adoption. I think the bottom line is BIM is not a fad. It's here to stay. It's been around for over 10 years now, and it's only increasing in adoption rates. We're seeing more and more people in more and more disciplines adopting BIM and being successful with it. And the benefits are fairly consistent across the board for everybody. We talked about implementation best practices. Again, the key thing here is it's got to be driven by leadership. You've got to have a plan. You got to adopt a culture of continuous change and continuous improvement, and don't give up when you hit the rough spots, because that's when the teachable and the learning moments are. And then finally, collaboration. Collaboration, again, is having a huge impact on BIM, and with modern collaborative tools, you're just decreasing the lack of coordination and the errors even more. So with that, Amy, I think we can open it up to any questions that we might have.
All right, we have had a few come in. And if anyone else has any questions, please type those in now. One is, how long does a typical implementation take before it can be considered done?
That's a good question, and it's kind of hard to answer because it kind of depends on the situation and the firm and a lot of other factors. But I'll just tell you from my own personal experience, if I'm taking, say, an architectural firm, a typical architectural firm, say small to mid-size, from no BIM implementation to, say, through the first round where they're starting to see the benefits of that first set that they want to accomplish, we're probably looking at 3 to 6 months. Maybe as much as 9 months, depending on what kinds of projects they're working on and how long that project cycle goes before they start to see the real benefits on, say, their third or fourth project.
All right, and someone else has asked, how can I find out what my options are for getting help with an implementation?
If you are a customer of Applied Software, I would say contact your account manager, and if you don't know who that is, get a hold of us. You can just email appliedsoftware@asti.com, and we can find out who that is for you, and we can get you in touch with a services person, one of our BIM specialists, and they can go through all of your options for you as to what we can provide as far as any kinds of mentoring services, implementation services, support, training, etc.
Perfect.
And we have several package services available as well. So sort of like car dealers, we have menu pricing. If you want to look at that, we can also customize a solution for you as well.
Great. And you can email that email address that's on the screen right now, or you can open up the email widget and send us a message straight from your dashboard. And another question we have is, our offices are scattered throughout the country. What is the best way to implement firm-wide?
Well, again, your options are multiple. You know, the internet is a wonderful thing now. I have done some implementations completely remote where I never met anybody I was working with face-to-face. I don't like to do that. I would prefer to have at least some initial face-to-face contact. But to cut down on travel time, we can do a lot of things remotely. You know, we conduct a lot of our training via GoToTraining or GoToMeeting, and that's been very, very effective. We can do mentoring sessions with screen sharing. We can share files as far as your standards and content as we develop them for you, or as you just need us to review them, however you choose to do that. We can do that via a variety of remote access mechanisms. So we take a lot of advantage of internet technology here at Applied Software, and we can utilize those to not only bring those geographically dispersed teams together, but also to cut down on travel costs.
All right, we had a really great compliment written in. We highly recommend using Applied Software for BIM implementation. We're a 12-member firm, and we worked with Nat and the ASTI team in the first quarter of 2017 and couldn't be happier. We only have about 6 members fully implemented, so we're still working on the rest of the office. We highly recommend getting on board and trusting Applied Software to get your BIM implementation destination. So
okay,
thank you very much, David.
Whoever that is, the check's in the mail. No, thank you.
Right.
That's really good to hear.
And we had another question also. What's better, to have BIM in-house or outsource it?
It really depends on the firm. I assume you're talking about BIM management. It really depends on the firm. For example, again, if you're a larger firm with, say, 30 or more people in your, actively using a BIM process, I would strongly suggest you have a BIM manager in-house. Now, you may have a BIM manager in-house who maybe still cannot deal with everything that needs to be done, so you may choose to outsource some of that, right? So the BIM manager handles the day-to-day tactical things, and the outsource can just kind of take some of the overflow from that person as they want to offload it. And we do have what we call AEC Design Technology Management Services, where we can allot a certain number of hours per month, and it's a monthly fee that you pay for us to do that. And we're basically just here to fill in for what the BIM manager is unable to address, and that can run the gamut from a variety of different types of services. We can use those same design technology management services, though, to assist a smaller firm that just cannot justify having a dedicated BIM manager, but still needs to have some of that BIM management to happen.
All right, thank you, Matt. I don't see any more questions now. If you think of questions later on, feel free to contact us with that email address, events@asti.com, and we'll find the best answer for you. We will go ahead and close out of this webinar so we can get ready for the next one. Again, if you would like to join us at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, you can find a link to that registration page on the bottom of your screen. Just click on the link widget. You can see the icon for it right here on your screen, and fill out your information and join us. If you can't join us, go ahead and fill out the information, and we will send you a recording of that webinar. In a moment, a survey will pop up. Please complete the survey to be entered into a $25 Amazon gift card giveaway. You must complete the drawing. You must complete the survey to be entered into the drawing. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found this webinar informative and helpful to your business. We look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Thanks.